Hello and welcome to Pluribus Fireside Chat. Now it's 17 hours, but hey, it's something. I just spent the entire day doing a propane water heater thing, and now I am tired. Hopefully it's because of the labor and not because of the propane death. If this episode comes out, it means I am alive. Doesn't mean it won't be in the back of my mind until a couple days later, I guess. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, we're going to be talking about Chile for a brief moment, because this is basically just a continuation of the last story, where they impeached Sebastián Piñera. Yeah, well, as is expected, the Senate did not vote to proceed on the impeachment charges. But of course, that's not really necessarily why they did it. They only did it to make conservatives a little bit more on edge for the election that is coming up. The episode will come up one day after the election, so I do not know the results of the election yet. And the video will be edited prior to the election, so we will not know the results until after the episode is posted. But to give my final thoughts on the election, I believe that if Kast does not win outright in the first round, then it's safe to say Boric will be president of Chile. The reason why I say this is because a distinctive poll that I remember. It is a poll that they conducted that basically said, hey, which of these candidates would you never vote for? And an overwhelming amount of respondents, which obviously would have included the entire electorate, or at least a good majority of at least enough of the electorate so that people know that it's not just lopsided, and a good majority of them voted that Kast would never be who they vote for, ever. Eduardo Artes got a pretty close second, though. So it's fair to say that I don't think he would win in a second round. It will be closer than expected, because I think a lot more people are thinking about the idea of Kast making it to the second round. I think for the most part, at first, people just were like, oh yeah, we're never going to vote for Kast, because they were like, Kast is never going to be in the second round. But now, as the polls have tightened and Kast is very much going to make it to the second round, people are now taking him a lot more seriously, which is a good and bad thing for a lot of reasons. Good because he can grow his right-wing base, but bad in the sense he is now getting more scrutiny as an actual candidate. So his harder right stances will not necessarily translate to the electorate. And it's very likely certain candidates will vote for certain people. Like, for example, it is pretty obvious that people who are voting for Provost and MEO are basically guaranteed to vote for Boric in the second round. However, the remaining ones are a bit different. You see, the Sichel, Parisi, and Artes voters are going to be a little bit of a hardball, because Artes himself has openly stated that he will not be supporting Boric, but I have a good feeling that a lot of his voters will probably think differently. Now, when I say a lot of his voters, I don't mean a lot, but I think a decent amount will inevitably vote for Boric. Sichel and Parisi voters, I don't know. I don't know, because Sichel's obviously not that hard right, and neither is Parisi, but they both are decently right-wing. So it's fair to say that at the very least, some are going to vote for Kast. I would argue at the very least, half of them are going to vote for Kast. But the remaining half will be split into its own halves. I believe at least half of them might consider voting for, basically consider it a four-way pie for both of them. Two pieces of both of their pies are going to be going to Kast. But one of the four pieces each might go to Boric. And the remaining two slices will probably just go to no one. They'll probably just stay home. But like I said, unless Boric is wiped out in the first round, or Kast just wins outright, I have a feeling Boric will be winning. Now, anyways, let's move on to the next story. This one's going to be mostly just regarding the broad topic, but with one specific, and technically two specific things. You see, as we know, the 2022 elections are coming up pretty soon, and congressional maps are being drawn as we speak right now. And as you can tell, a lot of Republicans are using this opportunity to try and get rid of some opposition, particularly in in supposed swing states that the Republicans still have massive control over. Georgia, North Carolina, and Ohio. In Ohio, even though Trump won 50-something% of the vote, they now gets an 88, Republicans have an 88% lead in that state. And in Georgia, they're gerrymandering it so that two Democratic rising stars, quote unquote, Lucy McBath and Carolyn Bourdeau, two Democratic members of the House of Representatives, are going to be squeezed into the same district. And in North Carolina, we're having some squeezing of our own. You see, the way, here's how North Carolina works. Every time a, candidate or something, every time there's a congressional map drawn, North Carolina waits till the very last second to go, hey, wait, this is racist. Because it just so happens, legally, you're allowed to gerrymander on party lines, but you're not allowed to gerrymander under racial lines. However, it just so happens that if you gerrymander amongst African Americans and a gerrymander against Democrats, there's pretty similar lines that you'll be drawing. So what usually happens is we have a little bit of a court battle to decide whether or not the lines that we drew are racist or not. Usually they are, and it just so happens they have to redraw them. But they redraw them in a way that isn't exactly that fair. For example, the most recent one that happened did end up getting a huge favor to the Democrats, because Democrats used to have 3 members of Congress. Now they have 5. But under this new map, they could be going back to 3, depending on quite a number of things. You see, they've drawn it so that of the 5 members of Congress that are Democrats, 1 is gerrymandered in a safe Republican district, so she's going to either have to move, the person I'm talking about is Kathy Manning, she's either going to have to move, or she's going to have to run and potentially lose in the seat. Deborah Ross, David Price, and Alma Adams were basically redrawn very similarly to last time. Deborah Ross and David Price basically being drawn around the Wake County area, and Alma Adams essentially having the exact same district. She literally just has point blank the same district. And the last one, G.K. Butterfield, he is in a D+1 district, but this district has gotten pretty, it's so close, it's D+1, or, the closest, and that was actually a high ranking of it. Technically, it's pretty even, for the most part, so it could go either way, which is why G.K. Butterfield has actually stepped down and decided that he will not be running for re-election. David Price has done that as well, but that's for a different reason. He's just too old. There's a good chance that they might actually be redrawing this district, but this district, this redrawing has actually changed so much that it has actually changed the Senate race. Erica Smith and Richard L. Watkins have dropped out of their Senate bids and have jumped into House races, because those 2 House races are going to be open and could potentially be good favors to them. Apparently Erica Smith was actually pushed into running for Congress. My guess is statewide officials are basically going to tell her, hey, go in this district, because if she loses, doesn't matter. If she wins, good on them. But as you can see, Republicans are trying to win the House, so Democrats are going to have to try and win the Senate. And that might not be so good, or it might be really good, depending on the candidates that they choose. We'll have to wait to see how 2022 holds. So anyways, now on to the next story. We're going to be talking about California and other elections as well, because this is something interesting that has happened in California. 2 state-qualified parties will be running joint tickets in 2022. The Green Party of California and the Peace and Freedom Party have basically agreed to a formal coalition. Now, these 2 parties, you may remember, I've talked about them before. The Green Party is, of course, an eco-socialist party. The Peace and Freedom Party is a socialist feminist party. And these 2 parties are now officially going to run a joint ticket come the next election cycle. They've supported each other's candidacies in the past. The Greens have endorsed Jose Cortez, I think. And in 2018, Kenneth Mejia and the other guy, Rodolfo Cortez Barragan. I think Laura Wells as well. But I get it, Laura Wells as well. Were endorsed by the Peace and Freedom Party. But those were basically informal groupings, like, for the time being. But this is going to be a formal coalition, meaning that there isn't going to be a Green and a PFP candidate in these races. There are people for Secretary of State, Attorney General, like, State Controller. Like, for those 3 races, they're going to be Green candidates. And for Senate, like, the most interesting one is the Senate race, where they're going to be backing John Parker, a former nominee of another socialist party called the Workers' World Party, who's run for Senate in the past, actually. There's only one thing I can really say about this. This is leftist unity in its best. Like, 2 left-wing parties have decided to cut the BS and just decide to go and work on multiple candidacies together. Instead of trying to split their own vote or anything of the sort, they're going to try and build multi-tendency organizations for the time being. As other people have stated, this is the only way they're going to get their voices heard, especially in a state like California. So it's best to actually do this. So anyways, now let's move on to the next story. Okay, so here's the next story that is very interesting. So there's been a controversy for DSA right now. Here's the controversy. Portland DSA has decided to begin the calls to get the National DSA to either censure or expel Jamaal Bowman for supporting the Iron Dome missile defense system and then going to Israel and then visiting the Knesset. Basically saying, like, he's clearly not caring about the Palestinians, so maybe we shouldn't support him anymore. And I tweeted this the day I found out this happened. That's definitely a thing that's happening. Like, I mean, let's say hypothetically, like, if I got an email from DSA tomorrow that was asking for my vote on whether or not to expel or censure Jamaal Bowman, I would, well, I mean, it would depend on the vote. I'll be fair. If DSA censured him, which basically, like, censoring someone basically just means, hey, we don't approve of you. Like, that was a bad idea. Like, if they vote to, like, criticize Jamaal Bowman or anything of the sort, which is basically censoring it literally does nothing, I'd be okay with that, TBH. Because if that's going to be the thing that you choose a hardline stance on, then yeah, fine, fair. But I wouldn't vote to expel. Expelling Jamaal Bowman makes no sense. Jamaal Bowman is one of the people who has led DSA into a new direction. He is pushing for democratic socialist policies, and DSA itself, it has a plank on Palestinian rights, but it's not a Palestinian rights organization. Like, if he was a member of BDS and then he did this and then they voted to expel him, makes sense. But he is not. It's not like supporting, like, not even supporting, like it doesn't even seem like he quote unquote supports Israel in a technical way. Well, I mean, actually, to be fair, I guess voting for an Iron Dome might be something close to that, but it's not like he voted like, I mean, yeah, but you can see I'm struggling here, because to a degree, I get where they're coming from. And I applaud them for actually, like, doing, like, because again, like, many people point out, like, Jamaal Bowman didn't get nothing. Like when the Iron Dome vote happened, the blame was put on AOC, who voted present, and not on Jamaal Bowman, who voted yes. Doing this would make sense, technically. I would not vote to expel. I would not push for expel. But if they censored him, that would be fair. I've stated this before, and I'll state it again. There have been socialist Zionists before, so it's not like he's a fraud of, like, socialism or anything of the sort. But I would say, okay, it's fair to criticize him for it, and censoring would be a form of criticism. And if Jamaal is actually cares about the issue, he will definitely be like, okay, fine, fair. We may have some disagreements in this area. That's fine. Then we can just move on. But expelling, of course, is definitely, like, a bit too far, in my opinion. An expulsion on this issue would probably have to be something a lot more, like, very hard-hitting. Like, for example, like, let's say tomorrow Jamaal Bowman voted to not recognize the BDS movement, then you would probably think, okay, he's definitely definitely pretty far off from this. Look at that BDS bill. This was the one I was specifically talking about, the BDS bill that, like, tried to, like, basically said, like, BDS is bad, and then the law members of Congress voted yes. Like, if they did that, then that would be pretty bad. Like, if he voted yes to that, that would be no. But he didn't, because I don't think he was in Congress at the time. But again, expelling is probably a bit too big on what he's done right now. Especially considering, like, again, like, one of the things they say is, like, him going to Israel. That really? But anyways, that's a different story. The next story we're going to be talking about is the Vermont Senate race. Literally the day after I posted the last video, we received a bombshell. The bombshell being that Patrick Leahy, the last Watergate baby, and the only, like, as that term means, the last senator to be elected in the 1970s, has announced that he will not be running for another term in the Senate. Meaning that in 2022, the Vermont Senate race will be up for grabs. And the entire field of candidates just stopped in their tracks because they are waiting on two people to make a decision. Peter Welch and Bernie Sanders. They're waiting to see if Peter Welch will run for Senate and if Bernie Sanders will endorse him for Senate. The media has already made their speculations that Welch is probably the best suited to run because he's the only other statewide Democrat that has been elected to Congress since, like, the 60s. By that I mean, like, in the 60s they elected a Democrat and then Bernie got elected, and then I think a Republican got elected before Bernie. But then Peter Welch ran and he became, like, the next person after Bernie won the Senate seat. But basically, it does seem to be like it's just the next round. Like, now it's Welch's turn. My thoughts? I mean, I like Peter Welch. He's a fine candidate. But I didn't want him to run. Honestly, I was hoping for David E. Zuckerman to run, because David Zuckerman was, like, the, like, torchbearer for the progressive movement. But it seems that he's not going to be running this time, and he's instead going to try for something else. Here's my big prediction. By 2025, him and Welch will be in Congress. I originally said in 2023, but I decided to hold off on that because it seems likely that he might not even run for the House seat that Welch will vacate. But I am 100% expecting Zuckerman to run for Bernie's seat in the next cycle, because I maintain this fact. I do not think Bernie is going to run in 2024 for anything. I think he's going to pack his bags and retire. And that may be why Leahy retired, to give Bernie some ideas on retirement. I have a feeling that he's going to retire in 2024, and maybe he's going to give his support to Zuckerman. Like, he'll try to exert his power to get Welch in the seat, and then he's going to try and exert his power again to get, like, the person in Congress, and then he's going to exert his power again to get Zuckerman in the seat in 2024. I have a feeling that he's going to be like, look, I've exerted my power, AOC's in the House, we got a couple of Senate people, I think it's time for me to head out. And then he's going to become, like, a figurehead, like, maybe he'll be, like, officially part of, like, our revolution, or maybe he'll, like, go to DSA or something. Essentially, he's going to retire and then try to exert his power through activism in his final years of life or something like that. And the certain candidates have, like, okay, now that I think about it, there might be one kick in the butt to try and stop Zuckerman in the next election cycle, because I have a feeling, no, wait, I don't even think that. I was going to say that I had a feeling that Phil Scott, the incumbent Vermont governor, might run for Senate in 2024, but I actually have a theory on that. You see, because this election cycle, there were a lot of, like, moderate, like, Senate moderate Republican governors in blue states, like Larry Hogan, Christopher Sununu, Phil Scott, as I mentioned previously, and a couple of others, that Republicans have basically been courting, like practically begging to run for Senate, but these guys don't do it. And I have a feeling I know why. Because in their states, they are still well liked. They still have like that solid base of like establishment, like centrist type Democrats that will vote for them, because like we're essentially getting the same thing if we vote for them or the Democrat. And sometimes like a massive amount of statewide Democrats will actually go and back the Republicans, like what happened in 2018 when a lot of more moderate Democrats chose to back Larry Hogan over their own nominee, Ben Jealous. He must have been jealous over that. Okay, anyways. But if these guys choose to run for Senate, they are now opening the doors for them to get a nationwide audience, which opens them to a heck of a lot more scrutiny. And originally, it was a stepping stone. People would love to do that in the past, but nowadays, that is a terrible stepping stone, because back then, people liked moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats, because it showed like these guys could work across the aisle and get things done. But what these guys are now are essentially fakes in their own party. Like, here's the thing. People, like, and yeah, like, let's be honest. These guys are not liked by anybody. Like, and the biggest examples for these moderate Republicans would, of course, be Suzanne Collins and Lisa Murkowski. They are not liked by their parties because they're too far left. But the actual left, or Democrats in general, do not like them because they don't go far enough. Like, Suzanne Collins, they let people like Kavanaugh and Barrett roam free. And like they let like them roam free to be like on the court, i.e. going against their own principles to like back like whatever the conservatives in their party would want it. But of course their actual like methods and their criticisms of like God, Lord, Savior Trump do not earn them any favors in the conservative wing either. And Manchin and Sinema aren't getting it that much love either. Republicans love them because they're purple. Like, they don't really get any love. Like, modern Republicans do not get love. They only get love when they become Democrats. And even then, they barely get any love. Remember, Murkowski is currently on Trump's hit list, and Collins, they raised $1 million for a generic D. People literally fundraised to the Democrat without even knowing who the nominee would be. They just basically said whoever's the nominee gets this money. It could be anybody. And that's why people like Sunu and Scott do not run, because they know that when they get on the national stage, they're going to be open to this ire. And you can see this because Romney's kind of getting it, even though he's not even that much of a moderate anymore. And that's why these moderate Republicans are not running for office, like, even though they should, because they're guaranteed to win. Like, Sunu was actually polling higher than the Democratic nominee, and so was Scott. He was polling higher than Leahy. They know they can win, but they don't want to win. They want the position that they have because that's the position that they're like. So anyways, next story, the final story, the Build Back Better plan has passed, and a lot of contentious things happened with it. First, of course, obviously, it's been negotiated down pretty hefty. It's only $1.75 trillion. To be fair, like, Pelosi did get what she wanted. Like, yeah, she did get the moderate Democrats to essentially vote for it, with the exception of one. Jared Golden was the only person who voted against the Build Back Better plan. But other than that, it was essentially a party line vote. But the thing is, like, they kept their word. The moderates, aside from Golden, kept their word. They voted for it. But they were like, vote for this first, and then we'll vote for this. But unfortunately, it did lead to a lot of cuts. However, there's one problem. Like, people are focusing too much on the cuts, or the bad parts of the bill. Let's focus a little bit on the goods first, or not even just the goods. I'll just put a couple of, here are the actual things that are in the bill. the good and bad. Universal preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds. In addition to helping millions of children prepare better for school, the benefit would enable parents of young children to return to the workforce earlier. Okay, so that's good, but also I could see, like, that last part definitely does seem like, oh, maybe that is definitely not for the good of people. Childcare cost cap of 7% of income for parents earning up to 250% of a state's median income. I could see the benefits of that, yeah. 4 weeks of federal paid parental, sick, or caregiver leave. Okay, that's more than we had before, I think. A year of expanded child tax credits. During the past year, these credits have raised households with more than 3 million children out of poverty and cut overall child poverty in America by 25%. Extend pandemic-era Affordable Care Act subsidies. So far this year, these subsidies have increased the ACA enrollment by more than 2 million. New hearing benefits for Medicare beneficiaries, including coverage for a new hearing aid every 5 years. A $35 per month limit on the cost of insulin under Medicare and a cap of out-of-pocket prescription drug prices at $2,000 per year. $500 billion to combat climate change, largely through clean energy tax credits. This represents the largest federal investment in clean energy. Again, a lot of goods. This last one is definitely a bad. An increase to the state and local tax deduction limit from $10,000 to $80,000. That last one has definitely been the thing that has caught most people's attention, especially considering Bernie himself has voiced very vocal opposition to that last bit, but basically, like I said, every single Democrat in the House voted for it. I would argue that if it was like point by point, the squad and other members of Congress wouldn't have voted for that last one. Okay, well, at the very least, the progressives wouldn't have voted for that last one. But of course, that's a thing that ends up happening in bills. People vote on the good parts of a bill, they don't vote on the bad parts of a bill. If you was a bill tomorrow that said Medicare for all, but also we launch a drone strike tomorrow, that's gonna happen. Some people are gonna vote for it. Like, I mean, progressives might have tried to get that last part out, but if it's all or nothing, they're gonna choose all because the gains might outweigh the bads. I say we take the W, though. We tried. We didn't get all we wanted. We got some things, and things are gonna go a little bit better. Things have gotten a little bit better. Does that mean you can't criticize the bad parts of the bill? Absolutely not. Feel free to criticize that salt tax as much as you want. Feel free to say that first part definitely does seem like they just want people to get back to work instead of actually helping kids. Fine. Voice that as much as you want. But also acknowledge, yeah, some good things are in the bill, and we can take the W. Speaking of W's, let's talk about the main topic of this video. This episode is going to be talking about, I would argue, my most controversial video ever. Now, you, depending on who you are, you may not know this video. If you're a newer fan, there's a good chance you might not have heard of this video, or maybe you have heard of this video. There's a good chance that if you're watching this video, that's the video that brought you to this channel. The video in question is titled, "What is Paleoconservatism?" The video is, of course, me talking about the ideology of paleoconservatism. It was my, my sixth episode of my political ideology series, videos where I analyze a political ideology. I think it's actually one of my shortest videos as well, because the idea of my political ideology videos was that they would be incredibly short. No, there's one video that beats it, my classical liberalism video. At least one that beats it. But it is a rather short video, because the idea of my original video schedule would be that the ideology videos would be just short, quick, to the point. And they would basically be filler for the next video that would come up. For example, it'd be podcast, very long edited history of socialism video, and then video about paleoconservatism, really small video to just get a basic definition of paleoconservatism out there and be done with it. Not saying, of course, I didn't do research or do editing. It's there, but it's essentially pretty basic, just like making it so that I would have the ability to work on harder and more in-depth projects and further down the line. And looking at my video schedule, it literally was this. I made my second video on Mexican political history. Well, not political history, but like presidential history. And then I did 2 podcasts. One where I did breakdown of the midterms. One where I gave my thoughts on Bill Maher. My What is Paleoconservatism video. I did a 8 values test next. Did 2020 discussion. And then the next highly edited video was my screw up video. So it was literally like a last ditch of the year video. Like, wasn't really intended to be anything that well known. So it's a bit surprising to figure out that that video is my most watched and probably most liked video out there, with, as of the recording of this video, 7,555 views and 227 likes. And it is probably also my most commented on video, with 170 comments. It is literally my most, it's essentially probably the video that has probably been shared the most. Like, logistically, it is the video that most people have shared, most people have seen, and everything of the sort. Even if you're not a no matter what, if you watch this channel, there's a good chance you've already seen this video. But even to a lot of people who don't watch this channel that much, they've probably seen this video as well. And again, this isn't like that much of an in-depth video. As I've stated before, I've literally just made that basically to keep the room open for me to do larger projects down the line, because that's what usually ends up happening. And that's why I've changed my video schedule to just have a week where I literally just do nothing for editing and stuff, because I can keep myself open to do more projects. Now, right off the bat, the fact that this video is my most watched does irk me a little bit, because it's I would assume that the video that I want people to watch the most would be the ones that I put the most effort into. For a number of reasons, this is one that I probably wouldn't want people to watch the most. One, because I'm not a paleoconservative. I don't necessarily want, I don't want myself to be associated with paleoconservatism that much, but it is my most popular project. And for ideological reasons, but also I would rather a video that I put a lot more effort into be the one that is the most watched. For example, my video on the Socialist Party, the Socialist Workers' Party, not Socialist Workers' Party, the Socialist Labor Party, or the Prohibition Party, or eventually another one down the line. I already said one that would probably be one I would watch. Ones that I put a lot more effort in. For example, my Prohibition Party video, it only has 880 views. And that is the video that I probably put the most work into. Well, actually, scratch that. No, don't scratch that. Because someone wrote, the beginning of the Socialist Labor Party video for me. Granted, I rewrote it. So yeah, maybe it is the Socialist Labor Party that is my most worked on video. Probably. Makes sense. But that is the one that I would rather have be, the one that's, super famous. Because, but in all this work, I should get some, praise for it. But then again, that reminds me of, me and how I first originally wanted this channel to go. See, I did want, I didn't want this to just be the Lefty channel. It is a political history channel, me discussing various ideologies and various viewpoints, which means I have to talk about some ideologies that are not savory, particularly to me. And the credo I had in mind was that I wanted people who, even if they don't agree with me politically, to be able to watch my content and then be able to learn something new. If you're a young kid and then you watch this video and you think, that resonates with me. Okay, fine. That's what you have chosen in your life. Hopefully, the rest of my content can try and convince you otherwise. Or you can just look at that and go, I didn't think of that before. I'll keep that in mind. And then maybe move forward. And my channel's kind of evolved to be like not even like a sleeper. Like, it still basically has that mindset. Like, that's why my channel is called Pluribus Unum. It is a generic name that you can associate with anybody on the political spectrum. Like, so granted, you actually might associate that more with the right wing of the political spectrum, but then it's like, surprise, I'm a socialist. But that doesn't detract from the information. I've had conservatives say they like my content, even my podcasts, which I generally would have assumed that they would have liked the highly edited, highly researched videos and not necessarily the podcast. But they're like, no, I listen to the podcast as well because it gives me a better understanding, at least even from your perspective. It's like, okay. Fine, fair. So yeah, that's fine. I'm perfectly, I may have some personal irks, but it's like, okay, fine. But, as I've mentioned before, it is also my most commented video. So, I mean, it doesn't take two brain cells to realize. You look at this video, without, for lack of a better term, became a breeding ground to the far right. Okay, well, it didn't necessarily become a breeding ground, but it did become a little bit of a safe haven. A lot of people commented on this video, and, well, they said words. One interaction I'll remember, because it's hilarious, one person said, thank you for not saying that conservatives are all, racist, misogynist, white supremacists. And I made a snide remark going, well, I assume not all of them are. And they said, you know what, never mind, your video sucks. And I was like, okay. Sometimes you get, a generic comment, thanks for the information, great video, my man, I learned something new, can you do paleocon versus neocon? Cool video, But then you get comments like, it's okay to be far right. White nationalism is not racist. Let's go groypers. There was that person in particular basically just spammed the comment section with them adding me going, groypers. And not being a baby, I engage with them. And, well, they essentially run away. Not even run away. They, that guy who was spamming stuff, they didn't really do anything. That spammer, I just basically kept deleting all their comments about groypers. It's dude, stop. If you left the one and then went and then just did nothing, then it probably would have left it there. But it's why do you, no spamming? I'm an advocate for free speech. If people who don't agree with me politically go to a comment section of mine or go to a Twitter thread of mine, they're free to talk to me. My DMs are literally open. You can contact me from my website. I have all of these routes to find, get to communicate with me because I'm, open to the dialogue and stuff. I've always said, I'm open to be on, people's shows and stuff. I'm open to dialogue, but it definitely does get to some point. I'll be fair, I'll admit it. I have wondered, should I disable the comments on my video? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to. I understand that it might be controversial, that some people might say, no, you should probably disable comments. But no, I honestly will not. Never. Free speech, free dialogue, etc., etc. I'll of course take action if it need be. If they say something incredibly racist or transphobic, I'll call them out. I might even delete the comment if it's okay, that's a bit too much. But for the most part, the comment sections will remain civil. Remember, I only banned that guy who's just kept spamming groypers. I didn't ban him even. I don't even think I banned him, but I tried to delete a bunch of comments, but it keeps posting more. It's so whatever. Essentially, I just generally just wanted to talk about that because it does seem weird that this video is so popular. I hope that at the very least one of the viewers who may have been paleoconservative leaning watched my other content and probably went huh, maybe I should think about that going forward. I hope that that's the case. I think maybe one person might have been in that crowd, but I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Like, I'm just again, I'm open to dialogue. I'm open to discussion. And this video is just part of the discussion. If you feel like you gotta watch that video to get more informed on, like, your own ideology, your enemy's ideology, or you just generally want to be a bookworm, that video will still be up. Then you're free to comment your own thoughts on it whatsoever. Whether you like it, whether you hate it, whether you're mad at me for not deleting it, you're free to say whatever you want. My channel is all about making people more informed, so there's no reason that video should be gone, and there's no reason that people shouldn't watch the video or comment on it if they want. This episode was essentially just me rambling about this because it's just like, I felt like I needed to talk about this because, like, it's just so weird in retrospect now that I've, especially considering, like, I shifted further left than I would expected. Remember, I was like, when I was entering this channel, I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually center left, actually, blah blah blah. But it's like, nah. Like, if someone called me a communist, it's like, whatever. I mean, technically not true, but, like, I guess whatever. Like, that's actually what happened. Somebody called me a communist in that, like, thing, which is funny because, like, the communists on Twitter hate me. It shows how skewed our political spectrum is, that people on Twitter think I'm far right and people on YouTube think I'm far left. I think a future video will actually try to explain that. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you want some more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, check my articles on the Independent Biblical Report, or consider supporting me on Patreon.